Hi, everyone. Welcome to the State Fair at the Minnesota Hemp Growers Co-op space. My name is Maren Schroeder. I am the Coalition Director for the Minnesota is Ready Coalition. We are a group of advocacy organizations and industry members working to legalize adult use cannabis. Big thank you to the Minnesota Hemp Growers Co-op for letting us hijack their stage today. And I am here with Representatives John Huot and Emma Greenman. And we're going to be doing a little Q&A on full legalization. So if you guys can introduce yourselves, and then we'll jump right in.
Hi, it is wonderful to be here with you all at the Great Minnesota Get Together. And I am Emma Greenman. I represent South Minneapolis in the Minnesota Legislature in the House.
Hi, and I echo what Emma just said. I'm happy to be at the Minnesota Get Together also. But I do not represent South Minneapolis. I represent Rosemount, Apple Valley, and a small little town called Coates. So I am just happy to be here discussing this important topic.
Awesome. John, I have a question for you after this that's unrelated to this, but it is about Coates. Okay. So the first question we have is, probably a pretty easy one. Why do you think Minnesota is ready for full cannabis legalization?
I think it's about time. I think that what we're hearing from voters, what we're hearing from, frankly, if you watch what's happening across the country, Minnesota is ready to legalize, to regulate, and to expunge. And I think as somebody who started as a public defender, I know that our drug laws have been damaging to communities. They've been damaging to industry, and I think that we are ready to legalize, to regulate, and ensure that people can recreationally use a safe and regulated product, and that we take care of the communities that have been most harmed by our long and unproductive war on drugs.
So not only do I personally think it's time, but more so the people that I represent think it's time. They are sick and tired of hearing this over and over and us making promises that we can't keep. And so you have my word that we're going to make this happen eventually, hopefully this next session. But you know, the problem here is that we hear all these stories coming out of Denver and all these other things that are not true. You know, we're not, I personally went to Denver, I went to Illinois and looked at how they're doing it and how we can make it even better. But, you know, people are saying the ERs are full and all these things are happening. It's totally not true. I worked 30 years as an EMT on the streets, and I got to tell you, this isn't the problem we have. This is far from the problem we have. It's time, as Representative Greenman was saying, it's time not only to make it legal, but it's also time to decriminalize.
Great. Thank you, guys. I love the audience enthusiasm today.
It's Saturday at the fair.
Woo! Keep it up. Yeah, I like it. What is the most important component of a full legalization piece of legislation? What is the most important part of legalizing cannabis to you, like the part of the policy?
You know, I try not to focus on, as we just heard somebody from the crowd talk about the revenue side of this. Well, what we find in states that did the revenue side is we find too many earmarks, right? And then we can't do good work with the revenue that this would create. But I don't want to look at this as a revenue generator for us at the state. I want to look at this as, number one, decriminalization is a big deal. Think about the revenue we're going to save just from decriminalization, right? And then the other part is, this is just ridiculous. Let's get it done. I mean, I'm sick of fighting about it. It's time. Now, naturally, because I have a public safety background, I do talk to the police chiefs, and as you guys know, they're kind of not for this too much, but I think they'll come along. I really do. I think that we've seen others come along, and even the new prosecutors that are running are all saying, let's get this done. So that's kind of my 2 cents on it.
I think it is really important, and I want to look at the bill that the House passed in 2001, because it is really important that we do it in a comprehensive way. And so I would say the most important thing is that we are legalizing, but we are also making sure that there's a regulatory scheme that works for our communities, that works for the the companies and the growers, and that works. We know that there's a market. It's just a black market, and it's not safe, and it's not good right now, and so we want to bring that out. And then it is really important that we deal with the criminal justice implications. And so I think we need a comprehensive bill. I don't think we can do it one of nibbling at the margins, and I think that is the most important piece.
As a lobbyist, I love hearing comprehensive legislation because you all keep me employed.
Very nerdy.
Yeah, I love it. So some very red states are a lot further along than Minnesota on the issue of cannabis legalization and even medical cannabis. So why are we not?
So this is not a partisan issue. And frankly, many of the issues that our voters are talking to us about, we hear from Democrat, Republican, and independents. It's once we get up at the Capitol, and I will say, as the House caucus in the DFL House caucus passed this bill, and we are hearing from a very diverse set of folks, right? From northern Minnesota, from the suburbs, from the city where I represent. But what I see is in places where the Republicans aren't listening to not just our voters, but their voters, to voters across the spectrum. And so in the red states, a lot of them we've seen done on the ballot, where voters can go directly and make their opinions heard. And we see it with 60, 70% Democrat, Republican, independents. And so I'd say that one of the biggest obstacles we have here in Minnesota, frankly, is, and this is not a partisan statement because it just reflects what you see in the Senate and the House, is that a GOP that is not listening to the majority of Minnesotans who want this.
You know what, really, I got to go PC here so I can say the word PO. And that really does. What happened in South Dakota should be a crime. When the politicians, the attorney general, and the governor went against the will of the voters. That's ridiculous. We know where the voters are in Minnesota, and we will follow that lead. And that's kind of, you know, you can wordsmith this all you want. You can say that these red states have done this and they've totally embraced it. I don't see that. And like Representative Greenman also said, it isn't a partisan issue because we have as many of our colleagues across the aisle reaching out to us saying, yeah, how can we move this forward? Let's get it done. Because, you know, this is not, I'm going back to the revenue part of this. There's a whole egg economy behind this that's just waiting to be done in Minnesota. We know this is a good crop for Minnesota. We know this is a good way to go forward with Minnesota. I mean, if you look over here at the demonstrations on what we can actually do with the product, it's unbelievable. So, you know, I get really frustrated when people wordsmith it for a vote. And then they do the vote, and then they don't even act on it. They go to their attorney general and get rid of it. That won't happen here in Minnesota. We will make a good, comprehensive legalization project.
I can't clap. I have a microphone in my hand, but I should. So, Emma, you touched on this. Why can't Minnesota just put it on the ballot?
So you're asking me, I am a voting rights lawyer, and here's the thing in Minnesota. The only way that we don't have voter referenda here in Minnesota at the state level, and so the only way you get something on the ballot is a constitutional amendment, and the only way that happens is both bodies of the legislature put it on the ballot. So unlike our neighbors next door, unlike our neighbors out west, there is no way for citizens to go directly on the ballot, and that's why you haven't seen it. I think what you have seen in places where it has gone on the ballot is where, again, it is frankly not a bipartisan issue. It is a nonpartisan issue where you see voters reach a place that many of our elected officials need to get to, which is to say this is just common sense and it is coming. But because here in Minnesota we don't have that option, it's not in our state constitution, it is going to rely on, as my colleague, Representative Huot said, it is going to rely on our colleagues and folks in the Minnesota legislature to get this passed. And the Minnesota House has done that. We have done it, and we will do it again. And we are looking for a partner in the Minnesota Senate because I know that Governor Walz will sign the bill once the Minnesota Senate sends it there.
And again, we have done our research on this. We went to Colorado. We went to Illinois. We went to places that have put it on the ballot and have got it passed. What we found out is Colorado says, no, don't let it go there because, again, we're going back to the revenue side of this where too many hands are in the coffers or too much stuff in the constitutional language was written to do this only. We need to do this. We need to stand up as legislators and just get our job done.
Yeah, I mean, I would comment that, like, if the legislature has to pass something, maybe the legislature should just pass something. That seems like the reasonable thing to do.
Yeah, we agree.
Cool.
He passed something.
Yeah,
Just waiting for the Senate.
I watched all night while you guys passed something. Changing gears, why do you personally support cannabis legalization?
I always hate to go personal because but I can explain some personal stories that I've had of my own. We're picking on the wrong deal here. As an EMT, I saw a lot of devastating situations, but none of them that I could relate to cannabis. I just can't. The guy that was maybe partaking in cannabis was sitting in the corner sleeping while the drunk was turned into Superman. And so I have some personal stories where I've always had that working on the streets, but also I also have to tell you my sons are all over me about this. I mean, the new generation, the millennials, want this done in their generations after them. And so it's time to listen to our voters and get it done, and that's why it's kind of personal to me. But again, I told you my constituents want it too. So.
And my constituents also want it, and I hear about it a lot. I support legalization for a few reasons. One, I know it is actually medicinal and really important to folks. I have family members who have fibromyalgia. I know folks who have been going through chemo who have used it. And I also know that what we sort of know the research says, this is not the drug I'm worried about. And when we talk about the opioid epidemic and we talk about our real public health concerns, cannabis is a place that is therapeutic, and if we regulate it. And then I will just say, I got my start as a public defender, and I know that the particularly our drug laws that go after small amounts of cannabis have really been used to negatively impact and really harm, particularly our BIPOC communities, young folks, and we need to do something about it, which is why it has to involve some of that repair and not just expungement, but a repair in the industry, and that's why I support it.
Thanks. Second to the last question. What are you hearing from voters in your district? You both talked quite a bit. What are you hearing from them about full legalization? Why do they want it? How long have you been hearing about it? Just a little information.
So for voters in my district, this feels like a no-brainer, and they can't figure out why we haven't gotten it done. And I have been, it is something I hear about a long set of things, but especially as we've seen out west and more across the country. I think our medical program, which we did just authorize flower, which I know is critically important for folks who use the medical program, but I have heard from a lot of folks who have felt like it's expensive and has not been able to be accessed. I know that we've been hearing a lot of really positive feedback from this legalization of edibles. And so for us, it's not, people just can't figure out why the Senate hasn't gone along with us, because it feels like we're 10 years behind the ball on this.
Basically, when I knock a door and someone comes out and they basically start with this sentence, "What the hell, Huot?" The bottom line is that they want to know why we haven't gotten this done. And then I've had teachers come full circle on this too. I've had coaches, because I do a lot of sports too, that have come full circle on this. And they're noticing, since we've legalized some parts of the hemp world, that they're not seeing the scare that they thought they would. And so my constituents, and again, talking to them at the doors about this, and when they lead with this, that's a pretty serious deal. So I know that I have to continue to keep fighting for this.
Thank you, guys. Last question. How can words are hard today. How can cannabis supporters help legalize cannabis.
Look for supportive candidates because we're on your side. There's no sense in calling me over and over again. I got a list of people, and it's mostly starting with Senator, their first names, that you can start calling. Call your rural legislators. That's who you need to work on. Know who your friends are. Know who are not pushing this forward. And then also, don't be afraid to have this discussion with law enforcement. That's something we always went away from. Have that discussion. Work on that. Because they have lobbyists like you. They come and talk to us. But the bottom line is know who your friends are, because we're doing these same things behind the door. We're saying, let's move this forward. Let's get it done. We're talking in our caucuses about this, and we're talking to our colleagues. But you need to help us with those ones that you can't push over. And if you don't know, come to our offices, and we'll tell you who to talk to.
Elections have consequences. And right now what we are seeing is, and I'd say we saw a House DFL caucus that passed a full legalization bill that does the things that it needs to do. It legalizes, it regulates, and it expunges. We had no partnership in the Senate. They were opposed to it. So when you think about it, I don't actually think that this is a lobbying issue, because the folks across the aisle in the Senate, they know where their voters are at on that, and they're not listening. So when we think about elections this year, one, make sure that those candidates are asked. Ask your candidates, and you'll get from the House DFL members who all voted for it, I voted for it, right? The best indication you have of what someone is going to do is what they have done. And so when you think about 2022, when we think about 2022, this is the year, making sure you know people's position and then support the folks who are actually going to go to the legislature and do this. Because it is stark and it is clear. And again, like I said, this is not an issue where the voters are dividing along partisan lines, but it certainly feels like that we're elected officials. So I would say elections are a really good opportunity to get to know folks' stance and then support the candidates who are going to go and be in a majority that are going to get this done, because we certainly would like to, in 2023, to be back in the legislature, be back in the majority, and pass this with a pro-legalization majority in the Senate.
Cool. I just want to thank you guys for coming out today and chatting with us. If you're here at the fair, you can actually take your first step right now. Over at the tables over there, there are some postcards with a QR code. Grab one of those, pledge to vote, and grab a button when you're done. If you're watching online, you can go to mnisreadycoalition.org. There is a pledge to vote button at the top of the front page. Click that, put in your information, and we'll help you get some information on the candidates in your district. So thank you, everyone, for listening, hanging out. We'll be back around 1:30 with Representative Liz Ryer. Thank you.
Thank you.